12-year-old Nathan Wheeler never thought a simple roll through the park could change his life. The boy, confined to a wheelchair after a car accident 2 years ago, had developed a daily routine of visiting the small wooded trail near his home. It was his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the stares and pity he often encountered elsewhere. Nathan's chair creaked as he maneuvered over the gravel path, his hands strong from years of pushing the heavy wheels. It was late afternoon, and the autumn sun cast golden streaks through the canopy of trees. He loved the solitude, the quiet whispers of leaves rustling in the breeze. But today, the serenity was shattered. A rustling sound emerged from the undergrowth, sharp and urgent. Nathan froze, his heart quickening. He turned his head toward the noise, gripping the edges of his chair. A faint whimper followed, weak and broken, like the cry of something in pain. "Hello," Nathan called out, his voice trembling slightly. "Is someone there?" The bushes shifted again, and then, limping into view, came a German shepherd. Its coat was matted with dirt and leaves, patches of fur missing. One of its ears stood tall while the other flopped awkwardly. Its ribs were visible, protruding through its thin, malnourished frame. The dog's eyes, however, were what struck Nathan the most, haunted and glassy, as if they had witnessed unspeakable horrors. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. "Oh no. What happened to you?" The dog hesitated, its head low, body trembling with fear. It looked ready to bolt at any moment. Nathan extended a hand cautiously. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you. Promise." The dog didn't move, its gaze flicking between Nathan and the open trail. It was as if it was deciding whether this boy in a wheelchair was friend or foe. Nathan rummaged in his backpack, retrieving the half sandwich he hadn't eaten during lunch. "Here," he said softly, breaking off a piece and holding it out. "You're hungry, right?" The shepherd took a hesitant step forward, its nose twitching. Slowly, cautiously, it edged closer, until it was within arm's reach. Nathan barely dared to breathe. The dog snatched the bread and retreated, chewing frantically as though it hadn't eaten in days. "You poor thing," Nathan murmured. He noticed a jagged scar running down the dog's flank, partially hidden beneath the dirt. His mind raced with questions. Where did you come from? Who could have done this to you? Nathan didn't leave the park that day until the sun dipped below the horizon. He stayed there, speaking in soothing tones, offering bits of food, and letting the dog decide when to come closer. By the end of their standoff, the shepherd lay a cautious few feet from him, its body still tense but no longer trembling. When Nathan finally started back toward home, the dog followed him, keeping a wary distance but never straying too far. Tears welled in Nathan's eyes as he wheeled up the driveway. For the first time since the accident, he felt a flicker of purpose. The dog needed him. And maybe, just maybe, he needed the dog too. The German shepherd lingered on the edge of Nathan's yard, pacing nervously. It refused to come closer to the house, as if the idea of walls and confinement brought back painful memories. Nathan turned his wheelchair toward the dog, his heart heavy with empathy. "It's okay," he whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was reassuring more, himself or the dog. "You don't have to come inside. I'll be right here." Nathan rolled back onto the porch, grabbed a bowl from the kitchen, and filled it with water. He dug through the pantry for a can of tuna, something he figured the dog might eat, and placed it carefully near the edge of the yard. "Dinner's served," he called softly. The shepherd watched him, its amber eyes flicking between the boy and the food. After what felt like an eternity, the dog crept forward, keeping its body low to the ground. Every step seemed calculated, as though it was bracing for some unseen punishment. When it finally reached the bowl, it devoured the tuna in seconds, licking the bowl clean with frantic desperation. Nathan's chest ached. "Who hurt you so badly that you're scared to eat in peace?" For the next few days, the same routine played out. Nathan left food and water outside, giving the dog space to decide whether to approach. Each morning he found the bowls empty, though the shepherd stayed just out of reach. It became a shadow, following him at a distance on his trips to the park, watching but never fully trusting. One afternoon, Nathan decided to try something new. He sat on the porch with a tennis ball, rolling it back and forth between his hands. He spoke in a steady, calm voice, telling the dog stories about his life, about the accident that took his ability to walk, about the friends he'd lost when school became too hard to navigate, and about how lonely he sometimes felt. "You probably know what that's like," he said, tossing the ball gently onto the lawn. The dog flinched but didn't run. "Being left behind, I mean." The shepherd stared at him, its expression unreadable. Then, to Nathan's surprise, it took a tentative step forward. Its paw touched the ball, nudging it slightly, before it backed away again. Nathan smiled, a small flicker of hope warming his heart. "That's it. We're getting somewhere." But that night, things took an unexpected turn. Nathan woke to the sound of growling. At first, he thought it was a dream, but the noise grew louder, more urgent. He struggled to push himself upright in bed, his hands fumbling for the lamp switch. When the light flickered on, he saw the shepherd standing at the edge of his bed. Its body was rigid, ears flat against its head, teeth bared. It growled low and deep, its eyes locked on the bedroom door. Nathan's pulse raced. "What is it? What's wrong?" The dog didn't take its eyes off the door. A loud crash came from downstairs, followed by the sound of glass shattering. Nathan's heart dropped into his stomach. Someone was in the house. Before Nathan could react, the shepherd bolted toward the stairs, barking ferociously. Nathan heard a man shout, followed by more barking and the sound of a scuffle. Adrenaline surged through his veins as he wheeled himself toward the hallway. "Leave him alone," Nathan shouted, though his voice trembled with fear. By the time he reached the top of the stairs, the intruder was gone. The front door hung open, swinging on its hinges. The shepherd stood in the entryway, panting heavily, a small trail of blood dripping from its muzzle. It looked up at Nathan, its eyes searching his face as if to check if he was okay. Nathan's voice broke as he whispered, You saved me." The dog limped back toward him, collapsing at the base of the stairs. Without thinking, Nathan reached out, his hand trembling, and placed it on the shepherd's head. For the first time, the dog didn't flinch. Instead, it leaned into his touch. The next morning, the living room was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of sunlight streaming through the shattered window. Nathan had spent the night on the floor next to the German shepherd, wrapping it in a blanket and inspecting its injuries. Thankfully, the bleeding wasn't serious, a small cut on its muzzle and another on its paw. But the events of the night had left Nathan shaken. "I owe you, buddy," he murmured, stroking the dog's coarse fur. The shepherd didn't pull away this time. Instead, it let out a soft sigh and rested its head on Nathan's lap, as if the fight had drained the last of its energy. Nathan's mom, a nurse who worked overnight shifts at the hospital, returned home later that morning. Her eyes widened at the sight of the broken window and the dog sprawled out on the floor. "Nathan, what happened?" she asked, dropping her bag. "A man broke in," Nathan said, his voice steady but quiet. "The dog scared him off. I think it saved me." His mom's face paled as she crouched next to him, examining both her son and the shepherd. "Are you hurt?" "No," Nathan reassured her. "But he is. Can we keep him, Mom?" "Just until he's better." His mom hesitated, glancing at the dog. It stared back at her with wary eyes, still coiled with tension. "Nathan, I don't know. He looks like he's been through a lot. He might not be safe." "He's safe," Nathan insisted, his hands gripping the shepherd's fur protectively. "He's just scared, like me. Please, Mom. He doesn't have anyone else." Her expression softened, but worry lingered in her eyes. "All right. But just until we figure something out." Nathan beamed. "Thanks, Mom." The next few days were a whirlwind of healing and discovery. Nathan named the dog Max, a strong name for a dog that had clearly endured so much. He spent hours brushing the dirt and tangles from Max's fur, offering gentle words of encouragement with every stroke. Max slowly began to trust him, inching closer, letting his guard down little by little. But as Max grew more comfortable, his past began to surface in unexpected ways. One afternoon, Nathan decided to take Max for a walk. He strapped a leash to the dog's makeshift collar, a strip of fabric his mom had sewn together, and headed for the park. Max seemed hesitant at first but followed Nathan's wheelchair closely, his nose twitching at every unfamiliar sound. As they passed a man jogging by, Max froze. His body went rigid, his ears pinned back. Then he lunged, barking ferociously, the leash straining against Nathan's hand. "Max, no!" Nathan shouted, his voice cracking. The jogger stumbled back, eyes wide. "Control your dog," he yelled before running off. Max continued barking, his teeth bared and his whole body shaking. Nathan tugged gently on the leash, his heart pounding. "It's okay, Max. He's gone. You're safe." It took several minutes for Max to calm down, his barking tapering into whimpers. Nathan wheeled himself closer and stroked the dog's head, his own voice trembling. "What happened to you, Max? Who hurt you so bad that you're this scared?" That night, Nathan couldn't stop thinking about Max's reaction. He'd seen fear like that before, in himself. After the accident, even small things, like loud noises or sudden movements, sent him spiraling into panic. Max was carrying scars, just like him. Scars you couldn't always see. Days turned into weeks, and Max's presence became an anchor in Nathan's life. The once terrified shepherd was slowly learning to trust, though his haunted eyes still carried a sadness that wouldn't fade. He followed Nathan everywhere, his loyalty unshakable, but certain triggers, like raised voices or sudden movements, still sent him into fits of trembling or aggression. Nathan couldn't shake the need to understand Max's past. One rainy afternoon, while scratching Max behind the ears, he noticed a faint tattoo inside the dog's ear, a string of numbers. His breath hitched. "What's this?" Nathan muttered, leaning closer. Max flinched slightly but didn't pull away. The numbers felt ominous, like a clue to a mystery Nathan wasn't sure he wanted to solve. The next day, Nathan and his mom visited the local animal shelter. An older woman named Clara greeted them, her kind eyes lighting up when she saw Max. "Oh, poor thing," she said, crouching to Max's level. "He's been through a lot, hasn't he?" Nathan nodded. "Do you know what this number means?" he asked, showing her a photo of Max's tattoo. Clara's face darkened. "It's from a breeding mill," she said quietly. "A horrible place where dogs are kept in tiny cages, forced to breed over and over. When they're no longer useful, they're either abandoned or worse." Nathan felt a lump rise in his throat as he looked down at Max, who lay at his feet, his ears twitching nervously. Clara continued, her voice heavy. "Many of these dogs are traumatized for life. It's a miracle he's alive." Nathan's stomach churned. Max's fear of people, his emaciated frame, the scars on his body, it all made sense now. He'd been discarded like trash after a life of suffering. Back at home, Nathan wheeled into his room with Max at his side. He couldn't stop the tears that spilled down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Max," he whispered, pulling the dog close. "No one should have hurt you like that." Max licked Nathan's hand, his soft amber eyes meeting the boy's as if to say, "I know you understand." That night, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil in Nathan's heart. Thunder rumbled, and Max cowered in the corner, his body trembling. Nathan moved his wheelchair closer, extending his hand. "I'm here, Max. You're safe." Max hesitated but eventually crawled toward him, his large frame curling around Nathan's feet. For the first time, Nathan didn't feel helpless in his chair. He felt like he could protect Max, just as Max had protected him. It happened just before dawn. Nathan woke to the acrid smell of smoke and the faint sound of crackling. At first, he thought it was another dream, but Max's frantic barking shattered the illusion. "Max!" Nathan called, his voice thick with sleep. The shepherd was at the bedroom door, scratching furiously, his growls growing louder. The air was thick, stinging Nathan's throat and eyes. Panic set in. "Fire," he whispered. His hands scrambled for his phone, but it wasn't on the nightstand. The smoke was getting worse. "Mom," he yelled, his voice hoarse. Max barked again, darting toward Nathan and tugging at the sleeve of his shirt. He understood immediately. Max wanted him to follow. Nathan grabbed the edge of his wheelchair, his fingers shaking as he maneuvered toward the door. Max stayed by his side, nudging him forward. The hallway was filled with smoke, and the heat was intense. Nathan's heart pounded as he struggled to see through the haze. "Mom," he called again, his voice cracking. Max darted ahead, his silhouette barely visible through the thick smoke. He disappeared into his mom's room, and seconds later, she stumbled out, coughing and covering her mouth with a sleeve. "Nathan," she cried, running to him. She started to push his wheelchair toward the stairs, but the flames were already licking the base of the staircase. "We're trapped," she whispered, her voice trembling. Max barked again, this time running toward the back door. Nathan's mom hesitated for only a moment before following him, pushing Nathan's chair with all her strength. Max led them through the kitchen, where flames were starting to crawl along the walls, and out into the backyard. As they collapsed onto the damp grass, coughing and gasping for air, Nathan clung to Max's neck, tears streaming down his face. "You saved us again, boy," he whispered. The fire consumed everything. By the time the firefighters arrived, there was little left of the house but smoldering ruins. Nathan, his mom, and Max huddled on the curb, wrapped in blankets, watching their home dissolve into ash. Nathan's mom wiped her tear-streaked face and looked at Max. "He's a hero," she whispered. "Twice now." Nathan nodded, his hand resting on Max's head. "He's family." Over the next few days, they moved into a small motel while trying to figure out their next steps. The community came together, donating clothes, food, and even a temporary wheelchair for Nathan, whose own chair had been badly damaged in the fire. But it was Max who stayed glued to Nathan's side, never leaving him for a moment. One morning, as they sat outside the motel watching the sunrise, Nathan looked at Max with a mix of gratitude and determination. "You've been through so much, but you never gave up. You're the bravest soul I've ever met, Mac." Max's ears perked up, his tail wagging slightly. It was the first time Nathan had seen genuine happiness in the dog's expression. After settling into their temporary living arrangements, Nathan's mom decided it was time for Max to visit the vet. They needed to ensure he was healthy after all he'd been through. Nathan insisted on coming along, even though the memories of Max's past haunted him. Dr. Carter, an older veterinarian with a gentle demeanor, greeted them warmly. As he examined Max, his expression softened. "This boy's been through a war," he said, running a hand along the scars on Max's body. "But he's strong. And he's lucky, he's found a family who loves him." Nathan smiled, though his heart ached. "He's more than family. He's my best friend." Dr. Carter nodded. "You've got a survivor here. Dogs like Max teach us something important. How to keep going, even when the world seems against us." The visit revealed some lingering health issues, malnutrition and joint pain from years of neglect, but nothing that couldn't be treated with proper care. Nathan and his mom left with a bag of medication and a renewed sense of hope. As Max grew stronger, so did his bond with Nathan. But the trauma of his past still lingered, surfacing in unexpected ways. One day, while walking in the park, they encountered a man with a large stick. The sight of it sent Max into a frenzy, barking and snarling, his fear palpable. Nathan quickly wheeled closer, his voice steady. "Max, it's okay. He's not going to hurt you." The man, startled, apologized and backed away. Nathan spent the next hour sitting with Max under a tree, stroking his fur and speaking in soothing tones. "You're safe now, Max. No one will ever hurt you again. I promise." It was a turning point for both of them. Nathan realized that healing wasn't a straight path, it was a journey. And just as Max had saved him from danger, Nathan would save Max from the shadows of his past. Months later, thanks to insurance and community support, Nathan and his mom moved into a new home. It wasn't as big as their old house, but it was warm and filled with love. Max had his own bed in Nathan's room, though he often ignored it in favor of curling up at the foot of Nathan's bed. On the first night in their new home, Nathan's mom surprised him with a plaque. It read, "Max, our guardian angel." She hung it by the front door, a reminder of the dog who had saved them in more ways than one. Nathan rolled closer to Max, who was sprawled on the rug, his head resting on his paws. "You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever feel again," he said softly. "Hope." Max lifted his head, his amber eyes locking with Nathan's. For the first time, Nathan saw peace in them, as if the dog finally understood he was safe, loved, and home. And as Nathan leaned down to hug him, Max thumped his tail against the floor, a small but powerful gesture. It was a promise. They had saved each other, and no matter what came next, they would face it together.